There's some breaking reporting coming out today that has me wondering whether the Supreme Court might be able to, or I don't know if they would even be so inclined, as to reconsider their ruling around the Alien Enemies Act. This reporting came out in the Washington Post today, and to be clear, I don't read the Washington Post because I do not support Jeff Bezos. So I heard about this on MSNBC.
From the Washington Post today undercuts one of the central rationales for withholding due process. It has to do with a comprehensive assessment made by the National Intelligence Council in conjunction with 18 intelligence agencies. It's an assessment first reported on by the New York Times. The Washington Post today cites people familiar with the matter in reporting that the NIC earlier this month determined that the Venezuelan government is not directing an invasion of the United States by the Tren de Aragua gang. It is a judgment that contradicts not just what Donald Trump has said repeatedly in public, but what the Trump administration has used as reasoning for deporting suspected gang members without due process under the Alien Enemies Act. From that new Post reporting, quote, the intelligence product found that although there are some low-level contacts between the Maduro government and Tren de Aragua, or TDA, the gang does not operate at the direction of Venezuela's leader. The product builds on U.S. intelligence findings in February, first reported by the New York Times, that the gang is not controlled by Venezuela.
So I'm not an attorney at all, but back on April 9th, the Supreme Court said that Trump could deport Venezuelan migrants under the Alien Enemies Act. And my understanding of the regime's justification for why they should be able to do this, to rendition these Venezuelan men without due process, was one, because they were declared members of the Tren de Aragua gang based on tattoos they had. Again, no due process, none whatsoever. And then they were renditioned to a torture prison in El Salvador, where they still remain, having been denied due process. We do not know if any of these men are in that gang at all. And this is a good time to remind everybody that immigrants also are entitled to due process in the U.S. That is not a constitutional right, only extended to American citizens. Okay, but the second part of that justification is that the reason members of the Tren de Aragua gang can be renditioned to a torture prison in El Salvador is because they are somehow colluding with the Venezuelan government, and that allows the Alien Enemies Act to be invoked. Right, the Alien Enemies Act is an obscure law from 1798 that this regime is using as the legal basis for renditioning these men without due process. I am now going to read to you from whitehouse.gov. This is the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act that was done on March 15th of this year. Again, reading directly from the White House website, Tren de Aragua is closely aligned with and indeed has infiltrated the Maduro regime, including its military and law enforcement apparatus. Skipping down, over the years, Venezuelan national and local authorities have ceded ever greater control over their territories to transnational criminal organizations, including TDA. The result is a hybrid criminal state that poses a substantial danger to the U.S. This is their justification, but the reporting coming out today says that simply is not true. So if this is what they presented to the Supreme Court to justify being able to use the Alien Enemies Act, and we now have reporting that says there is intelligence information that contradicts this claim, is the Supreme Court going to review their case? Did the Trump regime DOJ outright lie to the Supreme Court? Like, what's going to happen next? Like, the entire legal basis for what they're doing. I mean, we've already known that it is morally reprehensible. It is completely unethical. It is cruel. But they claimed they had a legal basis for it, and the Supreme Court was like, yeah, okay, I guess you can use this obscure law to violate the due process of hundreds of men and put them in a gulag in another country from whence they likely shall not escape. But if the entire legal foundation of that argument is a bunch of bullshit, if the claims are a bunch of bullshit and they knew it, what comes next?